But after decade-long efforts to secure permission, an official delegation from Moscow has now finally been able to visit Guantanamo Bay, America's most notorious detention center. They met a Russian national there who's being held at the prison despite never having been charged with a crime. Efforts to secure his release were the priority of the visit, and consultations were held with the Pentagon as well as Guantanamo officials. The group was also given a limited tour of the facility. I spoke exclusively to the head of Russia's delegation, Foreign Ministry Ombudsman Konstantin Dolgov.
It was the first meeting with him. We have been trying to organize such a meeting for quite some time, for several years. He told us about quite a number of very serious incidents which happened with some other detainees, people whom he personally knows.
Did he give you any details?
He himself witnessed the aftermath of the use of methods which are not compatible with the international norms and regulations.
Did you feel he could talk freely to you?
Well, it's difficult to say. This man has been under duress for almost 12 years. So it's difficult to expect that suddenly he starts speaking completely freely. The most important, probably, element of our visit was to convey the message to the American representatives, to the American side, that we insist that his rights and legitimate interests are adequately taken care of. This is a principal position of the Russian government vis-à-vis each and every Russian citizen abroad.
And in an official statement after his visit, Dolgov also said the basic international standards of the rule of law are not being upheld at Guantanamo. Our correspondent Rima Abu-Hamdeh is more now from Washington about that.
The visit aims at securing the release of the only Russian national held at the detention center for over 12 years without charge, Ravil Mingazov. The Human Rights Commissioner reiterated Russia's position on the detention center in Guantanamo Bay. In his meetings with officials from the Defense Department and from the Department of State, he said that Russia's position is that this detention center be closed down as soon as possible. The mere existence, he said, of this detention center is in violation of human rights and international law. Back in 2008, Barack Obama, the U.S. president, promised to shut down the detention center multiple times. He said that he wasn't able to fulfill his promise because of the Congress, which on a number of occasions has passed laws to make it harder and harder for the U.S. administration to either transfer detainees to other countries or to bring them back to the U.S. and try them on U.S. soil, which has left the U.S. administration really in a political limbo, because this detention center has tainted the image and reputation of the U.S.
Human rights advocates are claiming the number of hunger strikers has doubled, in fact, in the past month and now stands at 33. But the military authorities are refusing to release any new details. Authorities said the release of information about hunger strikers, quote, detracts from the more important issues like the welfare of detainees and the safety of troops. I spoke to Clive Stafford-Smith. He's a lawyer for several Guantanamo detainees. He's witnessed himself some of the most brutal tactics used by the military.
If a prisoner from Camp 6, which is the least bad camp, goes on hunger strike, they automatically get transferred not just to Camp 5, but to Camp 5 Echo, which really has been the most abusive place in all of Guantanamo Bay. Prisoners are held in an all-steel cell and denied the most basic human rights, just as a punishment for going on strike. The force-feeding techniques are very much in action. Unfortunately, again, it's the very abusive force-feeding techniques. I mean, casting aside the question of whether it's ethical to force-feed at all, and the World Medical Association says it's not, you know, unfortunately, the techniques they're using in Guantanamo are gratuitously painful. So, for example, and I've witnessed some of this, they used to leave the tubes up the prisoners' noses so that it didn't hurt so much. They're still pulling those tubes out every single time, twice a day, and forcing them back up each time. They're still forcing far too much food too quickly into the prisoner, making prisoners sick. If you're sick, they just carry on doing it. It really is horrendous what's happening.